Session 694, Deleted Portion. Now, give us a moment. In his own way, Ruber has used symptoms as what he considered a safe framework in which to explore those areas he wanted to explore. While he experienced you, as given much earlier in the sessions, as cautionary and repressive, then he did not need the symptoms. He trusted you to set safe bounds on his spontaneity. This, he felt, relieved him of that responsibility. He was bound and determined to explore the nature of reality. He wanted to protect himself against self-delusion, of going too fast too soon, until he had enough knowledge to know what he was doing. He trusted most of my material, but he could not entirely trust me because I was part of the trip. The symptoms then have operated as controls, a framework in which spontaneity was allowed, but allowed only so far. The very fact that anyone looking at him sees he has not solved all problems is meant to portray exactly that message. Give us a moment. He fears for the gullibility of people, and is rightly appalled at their superstitions, as indeed you are, Joseph. In his case, however, much of this had to do with quite normal reactions, not voiced or expressed. When in the beginning you were cautious and worried about his overdoing it, or going into trance at the drop of a hat, he relied upon you in that way. When your enthusiasm grew, and you trust in his abilities, then he felt that to voice any fears at all in your eyes meant that he did not trust his abilities himself. You believed in them so strongly that he felt he must himself exert those disciplinary tendencies that you earlier displayed for him. Indeed, as he became more aware of the little that is now, he wondered at his own daring. There was no one he could go to for instruction. I could have helped him further, but I was part of the picture. When he saw that he could become a personality, and how willingly others would follow, he became aware of a new kind of responsibility. Your earlier experiments were private. No one was following in your footsteps. Give us a moment. He also began to see two poles in society, one highly conventional, closed, in which he would appear as a charlatan, and another, earning but gullible, willing to believe anything if only it offered hope, in which his activities would be misinterpreted and to him fraudulent. There was a middle ground that he would have to make for himself. To do this, he felt he needed to exert caution, to emphasize his own doubts in order to make a bridge to those intellectuals who doubted, and yet maintain some freedom and spontaneity in order to reach those at the other end. This required manipulations most difficult for any personality, and a constant system of checks and balances. The intellectual doubters could identify with his doubts, and yet be inspired by his freedom. Those who were led by their hopes into gullibility could relate to his experiences, yet he would pull them back to sanity by his doubts. At the same time, he would be expressing the unreconciled portions of his own nature. He had little idea consciously of the strains involved. Unconsciously, and at certain levels of consciousness, he figured it was the best route, allowing him spontaneity plus control. In much of this, you acquiesced for some time, having grown tired of playing the guardian to his spontaneity. You yourself were also not willing to face consciously certain possible consequences directly, for example, of television appearances, possibilities of fame, etc., and you were ambiguous in that regard. The ambiguity gave silent consent in many instances. The same applies to the telephone. It represents the world, outside influences. You do not want to be bothered. Neither does Ruber. If you handle a call, he thinks you are doing him a favor, but in your contact on the phone, as with your contact with the world, that is considered Ruber's area, his thing. There are energy blockages then, and discrepancies. With Ruber's literary yet symbolic mind, my energy can flow freely in those directions of my intent. That should be underlined. Earlier, Ruber was afraid to say, my energy can flow freely, for fear that would mean he would also have children. In line with my intent, that is important. The suggestion should be given 3 times a day, in a series of 3. Give us a moment. He trusts me far more than he did me as part from the material. Tell him that I can be trusted to monitor any and all of his experiences of a psychic nature. Whenever a fear spontaneously comes into his mind about his work, he should voice it to you. There is more, but if you want to end the session, go ahead, and I will continue at the end of our next one. Ra said, well, why don't you give us a little more then? Seth said the symptoms are a result of blockage of energy. He feels that he is supposed to be an authority, telling people to go ahead, and so fear should be beneath him. They are beneath him, such fears, but unvoiced, they become impediments. They are shadows given substance only because they are denied. His intellect and intuitions spontaneously operate together. He is spontaneously critical, but critically spontaneous. There is nothing for him to fear. The impediment with reincarnation has nothing to do with his intuitive understanding of it, which was always reflected in his writing. It is instead a reaction against the ways in which reincarnation is interpreted by others with less wisdom and understanding. The suggestion I gave is highly important, but the precise wording. He has been afraid to go ahead. He is not one to compromise. And the compromise has caused the physical condition. There is no way out of it except for him to allow himself the freedom of his being. When he thinks he might try an out-of-body at a nap, have him tell you and call him at a certain time. Assure him that you will not only approve his spontaneity in all areas, but also check his activities and monitor them. I will also. That is the end of the session for tonight. Ralph said, it's very good. They said, we'll try. Have him read this as soon as possible. Ralph said, tomorrow. Good night, Seth, and thank you very much.